Friends, colleagues, and listeners, here we are now with a very, very popular and face that everybody will recognise, not on stamps or currencies, not yet, but I'm talking about Glyn Hughes, who's the Director General of TIACA. And, well, Glyn, everywhere I've been looking lately, I'm seeing you, and it's nice to see you at some of the conferences again, which is the topic of today's discussion.
Well, thank you, Chris, and it's always a pleasure to speak to you in real life and real person, to be able to touch you and hug you as we were able to in Athens, and to talk to you here in the virtual world as well.
Good man, good man. Yeah, the hugging bit, I'm not sure, but thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Glyn, now, one of the things I just want to cover, and I mentioned to you just before we came on, the amount of conferences now, they're all coming back, and it is great. And you know, seeing you in Athens was fantastic, along with everybody else, and having the combined conferences, I thought was very, very successful. So firstly, I just want to ask you about your feeling now about getting back into the real world with real people, and also the conferences. And then I'm going to expand a few questions as to how we compare the conferences moving forward from what we learned from the conferences pre-COVID.
Great. Well, that's a great place to start, Chris. I have to be honest. I've been in this industry now, not quite as long as you, but coming close to 4 decades. And one thing that was evident from day one is the fact that this industry is about people. And the best way to build relationships is to see, to shake hands, to look them in the eye, to nod in agreement or to shake your head in disagreement, to see the body language. And whilst it's good to communicate in the cyber world, it's not the same. It's partial communication. It's not complete communication. So I'm really pleased that the conferences have pretty much come back. Now, of course, it's still a bit of a flux year. So events are in a different time of the year from when they would normally be. And I think over the next couple of years, you might start to see a rechanneling, as it were, of the calendar. So it becomes a little bit more spread out, because this end of year timeframe has been pretty tense.
Yeah, okay, and that's one of the next questions. Is obviously there was a schedule that everybody was used to, and they sort of plan their time, and then their focus on certain conferences. Now, the one that we just attended together, how did you feel that constellation went with the 4 pillars of different conferences all coming together, so that the same attendees could get the balance and the benefit of meeting with different people from different focus areas?
Good question. First of all, I think the event was incredibly well managed. I think the facilities were great, and it did work well that everybody was able to coordinate coffee breaks, lunches, evening entertainment, etc. So you could mix within the various groups. But like all events where you've got things running in parallel, you always feel you're missing out. You know, whatever room I was in, I felt I was, not whatever room, but sometimes there was parallel tracks or parallel discussions, which you thought, you know, I wish I could take a live feed from that other room as well. So one of the things, and I had mentioned it to Parveen, is maybe, you know, the format in future, you might look at areas of common interest and have almost like a plenary day or half a day, because every event, every parallel event talked about people, for example, talked about the current challenges with workforce recruitment, retention, and all those issues. So you'd have different perspectives, but you only got the view of one particular audience. So maybe in future, it's a little bit of well, let's see areas of commonality, bring everybody together, then diversify in the sense that various streams then go off. And I think, you know, but that's just a minor tweak. I think the good thing about Athens was there was the right caliber of people there. That's what people also want to see, is the decision makers, the industry influencers. You know, in this day, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point during the day's call, is that, you know, it was still quite male oriented or male dominated in some of the panel discussions, although you and I were on one which was actually the opposite. It was very well balanced, probably the only balanced panel that was, you know, diversified in the other direction in terms of more female than male. But I think that's one of the challenges that we have going forward, is that we've got to make sure that not only are the senior executives in the room, of all the section of the industry, but also some of the junior guys. So I think maybe as well to try and get some of the younger crowd coming through, because it's a great way for them to learn, you know, just to be in a room with people that have been around for decades, have tried things, failed many occasions, because you learn more from failure.
Yeah.
So
You know,
anybody,
tell me about it.
Anybody that speaks to me learns loads, because I've done nothing but fail. So I'm just like a walking life lesson of how not to do things. And, you know, so I always say to people, listen to me, get my opinion, write it down. Then when I finish, throw those notes away and never ask me again. and do everything exactly the opposite of what I say.
No, Glyn, but you're doing yourself an injustice there. I know it's tongue in cheek, but no, but if if people are to give advice and to get involved and really be engaged with the next generation, it's ones who are open about things that they wish they could have done differently or should have done differently, or in hindsight, would always do differently. So I think that wisdom is something that's that's really important moving forward. But what you're saying about the younger generation, I don't know if you were there in the conference where there was one young man right at the very back who said he'd like to do something. Well, we've already arranged that now. So I told him to come up afterwards, and so he's gonna take on that particular panel, and the whole panel team will be very diverse, and he'll lead it. He won't be pushed into anything, and I also had a word with him and said, don't let your bosses or anybody else influence you. You do what you feel is necessary. So I think people are listening. But the other thing now about the diversity, and I mentioned it to you earlier, I think we have to be careful with swinging too far one way or the other with extremes, and also looking at quotas and numbers, because even some of the panelists that were on with us, I mean, very, very accomplished, Glyn, and when I look at a panel like that, and I think I even said it, I don't look at whether somebody is old, young, what color, what religion, what sex, etc., what gender. It's people who you're happy to listen to, and people who you're happy to interact with. And I think we have to be careful with that. And the diversity issue, it shouldn't be slotting into different categories, because we'll cause ourselves even more problems with that if we're not careful. And I've also had loads and loads of ladies working with me, for me, and I've worked for. And I've always had the utmost respect, because they're so focused, but it's because they're focused as good managers and good people.
And I think you described the world that we want to create for our children, our grandchildren, is a world where it doesn't matter, as you say, the color or gender or religion of who you are. It's about what you're able to do and who you are as a person, not what you look like, and as it were. But one of the things that we also have to recognize is that the world is constantly evolving and changing. And you just take one thing, for example, the fact that I worked with one employer for 30 years, and you were with I was going to say several for 30 years, but you weren't with several for 30 years. But you've had But I think we also have to recognize that going forward, that is not something which today's generation or next generation of workforce, that doesn't tend to motivate them up front. Their idea is, I want to do something for a period of time, grow, learn, develop, add value, and then challenge myself by going in a different direction.
100%.
And I watch my kids have done this. My daughter's even done it in terms of countries. She's living now in her 7th country at 27. Fantastic. Because she actually wants to immerse in different cultures. So I think the good thing is, though, people like you and others recognize that. So we have a responsibility to say, well, let's create. We know that's an evolving trend. So let's create the right environment to try and make that case so compelling, because this industry provides so much value to the global economy and global society that once they come in, we hope they will actually say, you know what? There is nothing like this industry. And that's where I think we have an opportunity, probably like no other time in history, because the value proposition of the air cargo industry today is at an all-time high. Not just COVID, but it's the commodities that are moved. It's the reliance that countries have on global supply chain. It's with e-commerce. It's with all sorts, with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, looking at working in third world countries, bringing products to market. Everything that the world wants to achieve, air cargo has got a part in that.
100%. Yeah. No, Glyn, I totally agree with you. And if you can get a blend, then it's most definitely the best way forward. But equally, if I was looking back, I'm not sure whether you'd agree with me or not, but if I was looking back now, I wouldn't have stayed so long with my first employer. I would have moved, because what I found was, when you do move, if you've got an open mind and you allow many doors to open, some of the opportunities and some of the experiences you would never, ever have thought of. And it's such a wonderful thing to do. But equally, there are some people who love to be, loyal. They love to be, content with that. And that's also good as well. So, everybody's got different approaches. But if you do enter into that, let's see what's out there, there's nothing better, because like you said, everywhere an aircraft lands, the same issues go round it, whether it's from
Yeah.
accountancy, catering, fueling, whatever it is. It's an incredible way of getting to work consistently globally. It's wonderful.
Exactly. And funny enough, I actually would disagree with that for me personally, because it was 30 years at IATA in the end by the time I left, but the time went in a blink of an eye. Because I managed to do so many different things in different countries. I was 6 years in the UK, 6 years in Canada, and 7 years in Switzerland. And because I pretty much changed job every 3 or 4 years, it did allow me to kind of pick up new things, develop new things. And I was really fortunate in the sense that and as you know, I've said it 1,000 times, getting to work with Des as well was absolutely the highlight of that. And that really kind of made the last 10 years, because it was 4 with him and then 6 after he retired, just zoom by.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I wouldn't have traded those years for anything.
Yeah, no, but I know what you mean with Des. I've worked with him and for him. And yeah, great chap. And you're right there, because the industry allows you to do that. And the same thing when I was with Lufthansa, I with my background and where I came from, and to then be able to go and live in the States, work in South America, live in Sweden, live in Spain, it was a fantastic experience. So this industry has got huge amounts to give. Now, with coming back now to the conferences, Glyn, I just want to ask you.
Sure.
Okay, now and especially now with your experience from IATA, so all the experience now of all the conferences that went on, let's just say pre-COVID and some of the online ones during COVID, what lessons now, or what influence, if you were able to, what would you want to see happen now moving forward, so that it was very different, or it was much more focused, because obviously business sustainability is going to be so important now for the next couple of years.
Great question. And I had a chance to reflect on that recently. And in fact, the Athens event kind of helped focus my opinion here as well. Historically, a lot of the conference programs, and I put on dozens and dozens and dozens, so the same as many people, was about education. We wanted to present information over. This is what you need to do. This is how you do the EO bill. This is what you need to do there. This is what you need to do here. I think the industry's moved on much more now. I don't think it's about this is what you need to do. I think this is much more now about this is what somebody has done, and let's hope they get inspired by, and we challenge ourselves to try and eclipse and exceed what we've just seen. And the reason why I say Athens is you had that first day with those innovation sessions. And it was just brilliant. Every single presentation was, some of it was sales pitchy, but it doesn't matter, because it was actually saying where they saw an opportunity, pushed the boundary, pushed the envelope, as it were, and came up with different approaches to looking at things, whether or not it's how they mobilize and engage workforces, looking at technology, looking at project management, whatever it is. I think that's part of what we need to do now much more in conferences going forward, is not treat them like educational programs, but teach them or treat them more as inspirational and motivational best practice showcases. I'd love people to leave all of the events that they attend, and we've got the next big one coming up in a few days, with saying, wow, that was impressive to hear what they've done in that area. Let me see if I can actually channel some of that into my organization or my personal role, etc.
Yeah, no, 100% agree, Glyn. And that one was the first time that it was done with Parveen, and you could tell, like you said, some people were using it as a sales pitch. Some people were, feeling their feet with regards to what really is innovation and how do I present it. But I think if that gets cultivated a little bit better for the next ones, I agree with you. It's a showcase, and it
worked perfectly.
Yeah,
it really did work perfectly. The audience was highly engaged. If you look at it, nobody left the room. It was pretty fast paced. You gave them the 15 minutes and bang, right, the clock's up, microphone's off, next one on. People didn't leave. They didn't look for the opportunity to get out. They wanted to listen to them all. So I thought, well done.
Yeah, no, okay, that's great feedback. Well done, thank you. Now, with everything that's happening now, like I said, I got this through the post today. The International Airport Summit at Twickenham, and then we've got your one in November. You got the safety one in Dubai from IATA. How do you think now companies and individuals are prioritizing, and what do you think the priorities are moving forward?
A great question. And, I think to me, probably one of the most rewarding answers that I can give here is that people will prioritize on where they see value. And Athens, you exceeded, or the event exceeded what they were hoping for. I'm expecting WCS this week to certainly exceed significantly versus last year, getting back to that sort of that number that we've peaked at before, or getting close to it. And so far, the early indications are that we're going to have a huge turnout in Miami in November, 8 to 10 Miami Beach Convention Center. Sorry for the plug, Chris. But I think this year it's kind of a coming back year, but we have to recognize next year budgets are going to be tight.
Yeah.
So people are probably going to prioritize on where do they maximize the business value? Where can they meet with their peer group? How can they generate additional business? Or how can they actually cement those existing relations? But as I started the call by saying, is I think this industry is about people. So I like the fact that there are lots of events. Some people say we have too many, we should merge. I think the market will tell, if there are too many events, then some just won't get attended and they will disappear. But if the audience is saying, there's enough for me to attend and pick the ones I want to go to, then I think that the forces should continue to put him on, as it were.
Yeah, so choice is good. Do you think that if there was sort of like an orchestra leader, and they sort of said, right, well, we need to blend all the different instruments and the different, wood instruments, etc. And if they sort of said, right, we're in a process chain, so it's almost like you need the first step to get to the second step to the third step. If they were given a suggestion that perhaps they should focus on something so much that it really covered that subject matter, but collectively over the year, you had opportunities to attend whereby you could then see where you really needed a bit of inspiration or engagement, etc. Do you think there's any merit in that?
Actually, I probably don't, because if you look and let's take the question on a more base level. The topics that you covered in Athens was every topic that there is in the industry today.
Exactly.
The topics that are going to get covered in WCS is every topic that's relevant to the industry today. ACF in November, every topic that's relevant to the industry today. You can go to some specialized events like the airport one will probably focus predominantly on airport. The GSE one will probably focus mostly on ground equipment, etc. But what I like about these different events covering the variety of topics is the audience is different, and again, as I said before, I love to hear what different people have or how they've tackled a particular topic, because if you can get that little nugget of inspiration of what somebody did on a subject. But if there was an event purely focused on people, well, I'm not a people manager, so I probably wouldn't attend that. But it's really important for me to understand what everybody is tackling with people because of the challenges that it's creating. When you've got ground handlers with 100% turnover in some stations in a given year, then it's critical that we need the airlines to understand that, because we need the freight forwarders and everybody, because we're asking the ground handling community to invest huge sums of money to keep up to date with the latest trends and innovations, whilst trying to constantly train an entirely new workforce, which in itself is not cheap to recruit and to get up to speed. So I think everybody needs to kind of get an understanding of what everybody else's challenges are.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you, Glyn. And like you said as well, I've got to say, in all the years I've been going to conferences, I've never once come back from a conference without something that I wanted to take on board or change, or, it's always great value, and long may it last. But it's so nice now to be seeing a sort of a freshness and an energy, back again, which is it's good. It's nice. It's nice to experience. It's nice to see how people are also enjoying it. I do also believe, though, that some of the issues that are you just said correctly globally, being experienced by everybody, we do need to do things a little bit differently now, and it's not all just about money. And I think we've got to be careful with the bums on seats for an extra whatever unit per hour. We've got to start offering people something more than just money. Make them feel a value. Improve their value, their own asset value. So
exactly. Yeah, and again, as we talk about sustainability a lot. It's going to be one of the themes. We've just launched this TIACA, a new sustainability verification program. And as you and I talk often, it's not just about the environment part. It's about your people. It's about prosperity. It's about the planet, and it's about the alignment of all three. if you don't get the people aspect right, you won't have an organization that's not going to make money, that's not going to be able to invest in improving the planet. If you ignore the planet, we don't have a future. So if you ignore the prosperity part, business doesn't stay in business. So it's not about one is higher priority than the other. It's about making sure that we're all managing those three plates, as it were, spinning at the same time. Can't drop one.
Yeah, but people, profit, planet. That's what I've always said, because if you just get people talking about the planet, it's not going to change. If you get the planet being the focus of everything that a business does, it's not going to make profit. And if it's in order, and a nice balance, then then we've all got a good chance of being around for a long time, please God. With that in mind, listen, good luck. Good luck in November. You're going to be at the World Cargo Symposium next week.
I am, yes. Yeah, I always got a soft spot for that, and it'll be good to see Brendan and the IATA team there. There's just one thing, I didn't see Willie Walsh on the agenda, and I hope he's going to be there, because one of the topics that came up in Athens, and it comes up in all events, which is how can we ensure that the airline CEOs, when they get back to their normal business, which is running in most cases a passenger dominant part of their airline. And I think the IATA Director General is without doubt the most key individual in the entire industry of connecting the dots between what's important for cargo and the airline CEOs, because that's his audience. Cargo is important to IATA, cargo is important to the airlines, and through that bridge, can we make sure that I think they can continue to see the value that we're bringing to the industry in totality, and we're going to try and focus on that as well in Miami.
Good on you. All right, my friend. Well, listen, thanks very much. All right, and I look forward to seeing you next week, and maybe also in Miami. But always a pleasure, Glyn.
Thanks, Chris. Pleasure talking to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.